It should have a specific goal or action. It should use concise text to make it easy to read and understand. It should use a clear visual hierarchy to guide the viewer's eye to what matters most. And it should incorporate your logo, your brand colors, and fonts that feel intentional and consistent. Next slide. So, when sitting down to create your communication, you're going to want to start with a goal. What do you want people to do? It could be that they're attending an event, you want them to register for a conference or a workshop. You might want them to learn about a risk or prevention strategy, give them some resources. You just want to make sure that the goal is clear. Next slide. And what's really important as well is to know your audience. So before you even start designing and going and thinking about looking for templates and that kind of thing, you really want to consider your audience and design with them in mind. So that means thinking about literacy levels, being mindful of cultural relevance, say in imagery, using accessible, easy to understand language, and adapting for the age and the platform that the viewer will be reading your communication, whether it's a flyer, a poster, or something digital on social media. Next slide. Okay, so visual hierarchy, guiding people. So for something like this, I'm using, I have a flyer here as an example, but I want to make it clear what matters most. So we want to organize our content by importance and lead with a clear dominant message. So on this example here, we've taken the Prevention Week branding and colors and created a flyer that has a clear headline here, National Prevention Spirit Week. It's nice and bold. Our dominant information is in this dark blue, so it really pops for this to be a flyer or a poster hanging at the school. So we want to use fonts that are easy to read. We've got our days of the week as the primary focus here, so you can see, you know, what day, what's going on. So we are using spacing to separate elements, these line elements, and we have a nice clear space for our logos. And the next slide. I think I pulled this apart even more on the next slide. So I can explain a little bit more what we're doing here. So with this flyer in particular, I actually did go in and kind of look at to see if I could find some templates on this one, because this would be something that is kind of pretty specific, right? Having a spirit week. So I did go in there and type in, you know, high school spirit week. And I kind of started with some things, but then I ended up just customizing it to look a little bit more in line with the style of the Prevention Week graphics, because they do have a website with some examples. So I kind of ended up just kind of doing it on my own. But some of the key points here to consider are color and typography, imagery, and layout and structure. So with color and typography, you want to ideally limit your palette to 2 to 4 colors. And we want to use 2 to 3 fonts max. In this example, I'm actually really only using 2 fonts. We want to have some good, strong contrast with the colors. We don't want to put, you know, a dark font on a sort of medium background that you wouldn't be able to read it. We want to make sure there's good contrast there. With imagery, we want to select images or graphics that look like they belong together and keep the colors similar, and sticking to like a certain style. So for example, on these icons that I've used, you know, we are using graphics that like they were created the same way. They're not like, there isn't one that's a full color image of ice cream and then a different style graphic for a light bulb. And you know, you kind of want to search for the icons that look the best together. And let's see, with our layout, we want to align things evenly, use consistent spacing, and avoid it getting too cluttered. So here is an example of the fonts. So we've used a bold, eye-catching headline font. This one is Roboto Condensed Bold. And then we've used a slightly smaller supporting headline font, and this is the Roboto Slab version of this font. So again, eye-catching fonts are bigger, and then with our details, you can go a little smaller. In this case, I did use a condensed font for the descriptions on each day because of spacing. So that's always an option. All right, next slide. So often we have logos, QR codes, and call to action as a very important part of our messaging. With logos, I find that typically when I'm given a logo, it's generally a JPEG, like on a white background. Sometimes I'll get PNGs or SVG files that you can change the color of the background or reverse it out. But if that doesn't happen, it's usually best to kind of leave some white space for the logo so that you're not having logos placed on a background that have like a box around them and it just doesn't look as clean. Um, I would say they're at the top or the bottom. I find often they work good at the bottom because there's usually some kind of maybe a web address or something that goes with it. So that kind of sits well at the footer of the page. Um, the call to action, you want to focus on using clear messaging for that. So it's call, visit, join, scan. Make it easy to find. And with QR codes as well, calling attention to them, using a short label with it so they know what the QR code does, and keeping it clear, uncluttered, on a background that's easy to read, a good size. Next slide. So yeah, the final check on your flyers before you publish them or your social media posts, is the main message obvious? Is it easy to read on the screen and in print? And you may have a case where you have to have two different versions, of something that, might have a different message on print. You might have the QR code if it's for a screen, maybe it doesn't have that. Is there a clear call to action? Is it branded? Are you using consistent colors with your brand? And also double check your punctuation and grammar. While Canva does have sort of spell check, it doesn't check for punctuation and grammar. So avoid using too much text, too many fonts and colors. Watch the contrast of text on top of a color or an image. Make sure it's easy to read. Don't try and say too much at once. And making sure that there is a clear call to action. All right. Next slide, I think we're going to show some examples of our before and after. So we've taken a flyer on the next slide here. Let's see. So this flyer that we're going to show is an example. The objective, the goal of the flyer is to raise awareness of the Lakes Region Veterans Coalition, their programs or services. So this is a two-sided flyer that outlines their mission and services, and then it's going to do several other things. It's going to highlight prevention and education resources, and it's going to encourage providers across all sectors to better support New Hampshire veterans, and it's going to provide some resources as well. Next slide. Okay. So here we see the before flyer and the after. So on this before flyer, I would say when you look at it, I mean, it does a good job of using a grid format to kind of break up content. And it uses, a good use of colors. But when I look at the flyer, my eye is like immediately drawn to the bottom flag, and it's kind of it's a little bit, the placement of it is kind of taking me away from the content and the information. Um, I think the QR code on the on the dark background is getting a little bit lost as well. Um, and as far as, just other elements in the piece, the map is taking up kind of a lot of real estate and importance in terms of the hierarchy. And the, I would say the copy on the left is a little bit lengthy. We can that up a bit. Yeah. The Veterans Crisis Line is pretty key information. So as you can see on the after flyer, we've led with a bold headline supporting those who served with the subhead of the Lakes Region Veterans Coalition. So that tells you right there what they do. The selection of a flag is a great idea. We took it a step further by trying to say, okay, this supports New Hampshire veterans. So we've used the New Hampshire map outline with a flag in it, along with a graphic of a serviceman. So this was something that I found on Canva. It's 2 different pieces. So I searched up New Hampshire flag, just not even knowing what was going to pop up. And it happened to be that they had the state with a flag in it, which is great. And then I kind of just overlaid that with the service member there. And then we wanted to call attention to what parts of the state it serves. And so without showing a map that gets a little bit overly detailed, we just listed out the lakes here that it serves. So we've kind of boiled down the who we are and the mission and the principles. All of this information is elaborated on the website, which they can scan at the bottom to learn more. So we really want to keep this a little bit shorter so that we can really call out some of the more focal points of the piece, which is this crisis line, which is very important. So we've separated that out in a box, and we've enlarged these icons a little bit so that you can quickly get, the 3 available ways that you can access the crisis line. We've set the logos and the QR code at the bottom on white space. You can see it's very clear what to do there. And there's other information here at the footer about contacting them. So then there is a back to the flyer. So we can take a look at that. Sorry. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay. Oh, here. So I've kind of already went through this. Sorry about that. So, yeah, I've kind of gone through that, and I'm going to talk a little bit.
I can't get her to mute.
That's okay. I've talked a little bit.
There we go. Thanks. We've moved your photo so we can see the whole slide now.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of went through this stuff. Sorry, I should have said led to change the slide. I will touch on fonts a little bit as well later, but you can see I've selected basically 2 fonts that we're dealing with here. And sometimes when I get an assignment for something, I will go to the website of the company or the coalition, whoever it might be, just to kind of get a vibe for like, what are their colors and fonts. The website for this one is pretty simplified. They did use a round font. It's not exactly this, but that kind of gave me the idea of like, yeah, maybe we should, pick something that's round and friendly, especially for the subject matter. And then I've paired that with a clean sans serif font, Montserrat, if I'm saying it right, but that's kind of my go-to font because it has a lot of different weights to it. And I think that was another thing that on the previous flyer, the font weight was a little bit thin. So this is actually a medium. Because some fonts, if they have a lot of offerings, you kind of need to make sure that you're not using one that's too light. Okay. The back
Amy,
side of the flyer.
Can I go back a slide?
Yeah.
I just want to show that so that everyone, because we had the, like the screen for the rooms up when you were talking before. So just so you guys can see the before and after better.
Yeah. So we can see we've got, this is the crisis line. This is really key information here, and we've really been able to pull that out and just in bold font get the message across. You are not alone, and keeping this message simple. If you're in crisis, help is available with the 3 icons, and putting this in red to really get it noticed.
And I love, did you all catch the image that you created with the 2 different images from Canva? I think that's really cool too. That's one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, it just says to you, New Hampshire veterans, without even
Yeah,
saying it.
yeah,
Okay,
it's nice. Okay, I'll move you forward.
so we can skip to the back side. Yeah. Okay, so whoops. Go. Do you want to show the before and after? The one before. Yeah. Okay. Can you all see the before and after?
Yeah.
So this is the back side of the slide, and we've kind of have some similar, I'd say, areas for improvement on here. And we're showing the flags again, and we since it's the back side of the flyer, I don't really think it's necessary to do that again. And it's also in a different style. So when I was talking earlier about, it's not like you can't use photos and graphics together, but in this case, if it was a photo, I would say maybe it's more like people or something, but versus showing 2 different types of flag images, if that makes sense. But here, I think we've got so much key important information to get across. We really want to make room for that and box that information out. On the before flyer, under what we can do, there's some really important information that is blended into this paragraph in a kind of a light font, but this important, these warning signs are kind of getting lost here. And so we really want to call those out. And we've done a similar treatment here where we've used an icon and the text. People nowadays look at stuff in like 2 seconds, and you really want to get it quick. We've called out the big question to make sure that how you can make a difference. And we've boxed in these resources using a kind of a button style treatment, and clear information underneath of how to reach it. On the previous flyer here, you have it kind of buried in this gray column, and you can see how taking it here and really getting these phone numbers bold have helped to get this message across clearly. We already have the veterans logo on the other side of the flyer. I didn't show it again. Of course, that was just a design decision on my part for this one. All right. So the next slide, I think we're going to, let's see what we got here next. Again, I've kind of already called this part out. We can probably go to the next slide. So Canva, again, is a great tool to create on a consistent, on-brand designs fast. Some tips in Canva, you may be aware of if you use it a lot, is that you can build a brand kit. So you can keep everything in one place. So every time you go there, if you're working with the same client, you already have their logo there. And when you upload a logo to Canva and you drop it on the page, like the colors are going to pop up or automatically, like it'll show you any image on the page. It'll show you what colors are used in that image. So that makes it easy too, to kind of keep those down to two to three colors. Same thing with fonts. You can create headings and subheads by body text in a font that you like, that you can always go back to. Templates, I'm sure you all are pretty familiar with using templates. Sometimes it's easier to find a template and then go in and modify the colors and add your logos and that kind of thing. I would just say, before you even get to, okay, I've got an assignment, I'm going to go look at a template, really go through those goals that we said about, who your audience is and that kind of thing. So when you're looking through the templates, you can kind of make sure that it's not something that looks like it's maybe geared to a different, type of audience. And I do find the big library of graphics, icons, and photos one of the best things about Canva, especially in Canva Pro. It really is worth that upgrade if you don't have it, to be able to get better resources in Canva. and you can, change the colors of graphics and that kind of thing. Just making sure that you're searching and getting kind of images in the same style. Um, there is kind of a feature on there, I think, like say under photos that says, look for similar images so you can kind of like get into the same style. Um, Resizing, I find this is like one of the main things that I love about Canva is that if I'm doing a flyer and then I need to do a social media post, you can resize your design and then, into that, into those other formats. You're just going to want to take a look at the design and probably be removing some of the longer text and just getting a shorter message across on social media, um, for that kind of adaptation. Okay, fonts. I was going to talk a little bit about fonts. If you want to go to the next slide. Um, Typically, for the types of communications that I do for growth partners, that are on the flyer infographic type of realm, um, I'm typically using sans serif fonts. These are without like, the little, I don't know if you know the difference, between serif and sans serif, but they're, just more clean. I use, I do use a condensed bold often. So this, first pairing here, the Oswald bold and the Montserrat medium, that's what I used on the, veteran, or I'm sorry, on the prevention flyer. Um, on the veterans flyer, again, I told you I like to look at like a rounded font. So that's that quicksand bold. Again, I paired that with that Montserrat font. That font is pretty good for bold headlines as well as body text. You could use just that and it would be fine. The Roboto is another example of a condensed. They've got different weights on that. And then, they've got other fonts in that with a slab that has a little, serif on it. They've also got a nice condensed, font. Open Sans is another good one just as a go-to font. And again, the Roboto family has got, bold and that kind of thing. So these are just some quick go-to fonts. I would say I would steer clear of, serifs and, scripts just for readability purposes. And, you know, I think that if you were doing like a multiple page report or something, like using a serif like Times or Garamond would be great. But, for what we're doing and kind of the examples I showed, I think we just want more of a clean approach. Next slide. I think
Yeah,
that,
the next slide I think shows
I think
that.
I'm going to talk about
Yeah.
yeah. So what I was saying is like, you know, avoid cartoony script and cartoony fonts, like these top two examples, or something overly stylized that maybe might become hard to read for people. And like scripts are fun to use maybe for if you have like an invitation, but again, maybe just for the word, you're invited. Or if you're thanking someone for something and it's like, thanks for donating or whatever, maybe the word thanks, but, I would keep it to that limit. Even if you're doing, something that is geared toward children, the the cartoon fonts just they kind of take away the professionalism of who this is coming from. So I think there's other ways to show that it's geared to children without using fonts that make it seem less serious or important. Because if it's about bike safety or something, and you use these kind of cartoony fonts, it just doesn't seem as serious. So, it's just kind of a good rule of thumb. So, um, yeah, I think that's about it, for the slide portion. Again, you don't have to be a designer to create something clear, effective, and impactful. So next slide, I do have, there are a lot of, or is that the last one you've got? Okay. There are other resources in Canva.
Oh, I didn't get that. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I think that was, yeah,
Mhm.
that was just like, you can go into Canva learning, and, there's a whole drop down menu of different areas that you can search if you really need to learn or, have more questions about things that you can do in Canva. But I can certainly answer some questions. I may or may not know the answer, but again, I can point you in the right direction or get back to you with an answer at a later date.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions from the room? None? There's got to be one or two. I have a question. So when you're creating a flyer, right? Like you create, in my mind, it's sort of comprehensive, right? But then when you do Facebook posts or social media posts based off of the flyer, you might want to take like pieces of that, right?
Correct.
How
Right,
do you
right.
how do you do that in
In Canva.
yeah,
So in Canva, you are going to, so you'll have your flyer. Let me move my screen here. Let's see. This is where I wanted to be able to share my screen. So on Canva's website, I don't know if you have Canva, if you want to go to it, but
I don't.
okay. So you're able to, so let's say you've got your flyer and you want to resize it. So you would go up to resize, and then in the resize area, it's going to have several sort of preset sizes, or you can do a custom size. So it's going to have a drag down to social media, and it already has in there all the different social media sizes. So whether it's a Facebook post, whether it's an Instagram post, you're going to click on that and you're going to say, okay, I want to resize. So it's going to say copy and resize or resize this design. So you'd want to copy it and resize it because you don't want to lose the work that you've already done. And if you're nervous about that, which sometimes, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose this, like duplicate your file and label one flyer and then go to the other one, like whatever it takes to not lose it, because I'm not sure how much of the undo feature it will bring back a design in Canva, right? So you're going to hit copy and resize. And so then it's going to take a few seconds and it's going to open that. You're going to say open Facebook post. So you're going to go in there and some things maybe have been moved around. Their size kind of funky, like because it's small. So then you're going to have to kind of go in and decide. So say on the Prevention Week flyer, we may just simplify the information and say Monday through Friday, what those things are, um, and then maybe just put the time and don't use all the descriptions. Use the icon and kind of, put the time. Or you may want to, um, call out, come to, look at the school's flyers for more information or something. It kind of depends on who it's going to. You can also list in the body of the Facebook post, you can list the details of each day. So if you just want to do, Monday, reduce stress ice cream social, 2 p.m., and then in the details, you can put, the details of where everything's happening. So you're just going to have to edit for where this post is going and how people are going to read it. And so from there, of course, like once you do, say, a Facebook post, I would resize that for Instagram if you're doing both, or for whatever social media that you guys are using, because it's already been kind of, drilled down. Typically, like I think there's kind of a feeling on whether or not you should use QR codes in social media posts. I feel like some people, they use them because maybe I'm on my computer like right now and I can take my phone and hit it. So I guess, but if you're on your phone, the QR code doesn't really serve the purpose, right? So let's see. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, I think that's great. Anyone else have any questions? Anything, any comments? Do you like anything you saw? Anything new?
Quiet group.
Yeah, I got a comment back here. And just speak up so you can hear you.
So I have a question about,
Can you hear Amy? Okay, she's good.
Yeah.
I'll speak louder. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So, you had, one of the slides had said consistent fonts across all mediums. As far as like, the heading, subheading, body, is that just, you're saying like, that's something you can save for Canva to have? Or are you saying that that's what we should do, is use the same font in every flyer and media post and all of that?
I think that you need to have some brand consistency if it's for the same client.
Okay.
That it may be that you have a selection of fonts and you're using those commonly throughout. If there is a standout piece of information or action that you want to pick something special for, that's great. But like, if you're in the same organization, typically you would have fonts that you always see when you see communications and colors that kind of are used consistently so that it's coming from the same place. You know, um, as far as using different colors in that, I mean, sure, it depends on kind of what the event is and what makes sense for it. That's not saying that everything you do has to be, blue and purple or whatever. But having some consistency generally is going to help people to know, oh, this is sponsored by them. And that was kind of what that meant. Does that answer your question?
Uh, yes, kind of.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm. We have another question.
Question.
Yep.
Thanks for your presentation. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome.
I am, my specific target audience that I'm interested in reaching are young adults. 20 somethings, some in college, some in transition, some not in college, some working. Based upon your experience, are there certain ways to kind of best meet the needs of my outreach efforts to reach that group?
I would say with that group, um, to keep the messaging pretty short. They're a busy youth group. They do I feel like respond to icons and kind of emoji style graphics more. I would say just clean, bold graphics that kind of draw attention. Um, I would say, yeah, the tone of the messaging is important and kind of not being too, talking down to or too serious sounding. Just kind of, maybe the language, is a little bit more kind of friendly and, not as, I don't know, I guess not as serious as maybe something that might be for more adults. I would say sometimes it's helpful to kind of look around and see what they're seeing on social and on areas that they are being reached. Like sometimes I'll just look around at brands and things that that group would follow or interests that that group would have, and then kind of seeing how they're communicating to them to kind of be like, okay, I need to be in this arena. Does that make sense?
Would
Yeah,
you
I
say
mean,
sometimes less is more in those contexts?
do I what?
Would you say that less is more? Less is
Good.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And visuals. I mean, they do. I have another client that actually reaches that audience, and um, they do respond to make it a little fun aspect of something. There's a lot of, like I said, like emojis. There's a lot of, just a kind of and like little graphics and icons to kind of create that mood. Um, and depending on what your post is about, but I would definitely say less is more and more visual. than text.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
I do often do a little research on the audience, and just like I said, their interests and that kind of thing, no matter who the group might be, to see, how are other people speaking to them? Like for the veterans thing, I mean, I looked online to see like how are other people putting out flyers to reach these people. Now, I think mine was better. Some of them were, I was like, oof, but I, kind of like to see like, what are the typical images that are being used and is it successful or not, how can I make this one more unique, which is kind of their coming up with the New Hampshire flag icon. So definitely some research before you get started is helpful.
Thanks, Amy. Anyone else have any questions? Remember, you got a subject matter expert here. If you have anything, don't be shy. I had a question and I lost it, which isn't unusual for me. What was that? Oh, all right. So maybe one last question, unless anyone else has something after mine. But one question I have is about testing messages. So I think in the world that we all work in, we produce, get it out. And we may not test it. Do you guys test your stuff?
What do you mean by that?
Like with the target audience?
Okay.
You do? Do you usually? Usually like just kind of get it out, right? Yeah, we do the same thing at Growth Partners, I think. Like if we're completing a TA request for somebody, we design it and say, here's your thing. But we don't often have a lot of time built in to see if a message works. Can you talk a little bit about like maybe some like quick tips on how to test a message or how you know if something's working or not working? I'm sure likes and follows and all of that, but anything come to mind?
For me,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, typically my clients that I work with, kind of have their kind of fingers on what is going to work for their audience. So I'm kind of dealing with a person in between the post getting done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of good on my end that, someone else is seeing it. And I usually show a couple of different ideas, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I like that. And they do test things out, and we do sometimes go back and say, this isn't really getting the traction that we wanted. I think we need to add an image. Like, we were recruiting for something, and we did a social media, campaign to recruit, and it wasn't really working. So we were like, we need to add some people in this. They need to see the people. Like, it didn't have a photo, and adding the photo really helped. So things like that. I kind of hear back from the client to say, hey, I'm not, what can we do to modify this? But yeah, it is kind of trial and error sometimes, and I think you're right. It's not like you have time to go, hey, what do you like here?
Great to do
But
a bunch of focus groups or
right.
not practical.
But I do think that you should keep track of, well, that one worked really well, and this one didn't. Why is that? This one was really, and you may, you just kind of have to have it. Unfortunately, you're like wearing a lot of hats. I get that. It's kind of like, okay, I have to like design this, and then I have to be the market, like test the market and all that stuff. But, some things are more successful than others, and just keeping track of what is working for you is good.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Anything else? All right, we're gonna let you go. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope it was helpful.
I thought so. And we recorded, but we started recording a little bit late, so I might have to adjust that just a couple seconds, couple minutes, maybe late. So again, thank you. And
thank you all.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Bye.
bye.